Welcome everyone. This is Hasler Podcast. Today, our special guest today is Venancio, Chuck Venancio. Chuck has been working in the advertising industry for plus more 30 years. So today, you want to listen to him and understand how this world, advertising world working. It was a big challenge for advertisers today because today we have AI. AI almost do everything. So what's the future of advertising looks like? And we interview and know more about Chuck life and another thing. Good morning, Chuck. How are you?
Good morning. Appreciate you having me.
Sure. Before we dive into our conversation today, I want to thank you for coming here. I know everybody's busy nowadays.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
And I don't know where you came from. Originally, where you came from?
Originally, I was born in New Jersey and grew up there, up and down the Jersey coastline, Jersey Shore.
Yeah.
Lived there for most of my life and started my career in went to school there, went to college
High
there.
school?
Went to high school there. Went to Rutgers University. My parents, middle class family, so not necessarily not an Ivy school, Harvard, like Harvard or Yale, but I went to the state school and got a good education and made a good career out of it.
Okay.
But, I was born with the ability to draw. I was, so I had this creative side to me, and I thought, I'm going to be an artist, So I originally, when I went to school, I went to art school. That's what I first did, and but I quickly realized that I wasn't going to earn a lot of money being an artist. So I pivoted my career into advertising and marketing and graphic design. So I did that in New Jersey at Rutgers University. So.
Okay, so you you did high school in New Jersey after you apply to college or
yes.
Or years?
Yes, I applied to many different colleges and decided to stay in New Jersey where I was from. It was comfortable at the time,
Yeah.
It wasn't exactly taking risks at that point in my life. So it was easy, it was convenient. So I was able to stay close to home. I was able to be close to friends. Had a girlfriend at the time. She's my wife now.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we both went to the same school in different programs, obviously,
Okay.
but we went to different schools. So it just seemed to be the convenient, easy thing to do at the time.
Okay. How long you have been working now anymore because you're retired now? How long you've been working in the advertising
marketing here? Yeah. So I was very fortunate. I got a job for at Y&R, Young and Rubicam, and at the time they were one of the biggest ad agencies in
New Jersey, right?
No, they were in New York City.
Okay.
So I was commuting from New Jersey into New York. I think I got that job when I was about 22, 23 years old. And it was to be that young and work in such a great agency at the time. I was very fortunate. I learned a lot, worked on major brands, traveled, went on photo shoots and TV shoots everywhere, and just was surrounded by extremely creative people. And it really kickstarted my own career at a young age. But it was tough. I lived in New Jersey. Got married early, and commuted from New Jersey into New York City every day. So in my late 20s, even though I was young, I was capable of doing it. It was a lot of strain to do that. So at the time, I had a boss that I was working for who I got very close to. He, in a way, he was like a father figure to me. I looked up to him because he was successful. He had a great family, and we worked really well together. And in 1995, it took me by surprise, but he left. He left to go to Boston, and he had the opportunity to go to a major financial services company in Boston and help build their internal advertising. They wanted their own advertising and marketing group. So a year later, he offered me the opportunity to follow him. And at that point,
Boston, right?
Boston, yeah. At that point in my life, we had 3 young children. I was married. I was the commute I was spending a lot of time commuting. There's a lot of time in New York City and very little time at home. So when I had a wonderful job, a great job. We didn't know anyone in Massachusetts or Boston. We didn't have a friend, a family member, anybody. And I remember, but I was sort of promised a great opportunity. I was promised a better work-life balance.
Yeah.
To get out of New York City, and it just sounded great. So at the time, we were, to say smothered by family is a little harsh, but we were always like, we going to this family's house with the kids. And I remember I came home and I said, and I didn't think my wife would want to leave all the family we had, and I said, "Hey, I've got this opportunity in Boston." I said, "But I can't imagine you'd want to go." And she's like, "When do we leave?" So,
wow.
So it shocked me.
You didn't expect that.
I think deep down, I probably didn't want to leave because, again, it was a big risk at a time when we had I think our children were I had 3 children. They were at the time 6 years old. And I think we just had a 3-month-old. So I had 3 children. And so to pick up and just leave and start somewhere fresh, it was frightening at the time.
Yeah.
I think what made me make the move is the person I was following up there. I trusted him so much.
Yeah.
If that job had come to me and I had this opportunity without knowing where I was going and knowing I trusted somebody, I probably would not have taken the job.
But you don't regret it.
But I did.
You regret to come to Boston?
Yeah, so we came up here. We didn't I lived in Boston for a few months until we found a home. But we lived in a suburb of Boston finally. And I spent 21 years at that company.
Okay.
And it was a great company, helped, like I said, build the internal marketing and advertising department there. And I'll be honest, it was Fidelity Investments. So it was a big Boston company. And when you work for a company like that, you learn about investing at an early age and how important it is. And so I was fortunate to do that between my other job and that job. And because of that, I was able to retire early.
Because you was tired or something like that? Or?
Excuse me?
You was tired to retire early or?
Yeah, you never know
Usually
if it's the
people go
right
to
thing to do and all.
Yeah.
But there were a lot of reasons why I did it. And I was able to do it. And I was ready for something new and something fresh. And I thought, I'll do some consultancy work. I'll do some other things. And I didn't have a big plan at the time. But I did it, and we moved full-time to Cape Cod at that point because we had our house on Cape Cod.
What's a big challenge that you find when you start working in the advertising industry?
When I stopped working?
Yeah. When you start working, beginning of your career, what's a big challenge?
Well, I think for anyone getting in that at the start of the career, it's a little different today probably than it was when I did it. Okay. Today, with everything being done online and everything, and now AI and everything, it's even hard for me to speak to that because I kind of missed all of that.
Yeah.
But I know when I was starting off in it, it was getting that first job and doing some work and building a portfolio that you can share. And that's your portfolio was everything then. And nothing was online then.
Yeah.
So everything was in a
portfolio.
Book with pages. Yeah. And you had to send it in. You had to go interview and show them your work and all. And so it's very difficult for somebody back then because you have to find the job first. You have to get the interview, get past the resume stage, and then you need to show your work. You need to sell the work in a way. You sell your work, show the work you've done in previous jobs, or maybe it's speculative spec work you've done to build up your portfolio. But today, with everything online, it's much easier for people to put a portfolio together, to put a body of work together, and email it to headhunters too. I don't recall headhunters back then, and now I still get calls, even myself today. They see my profile on LinkedIn and like, we've got a job for you. And it's like, I don't want a job right now, but I'm always getting, headhunters that feel like there's a good fit. So I think there's more opportunity today. I'm not suggesting it's any easier, but I think there's different opportunities than when I started in the business.
Because now everything that's social media now is probably can be easier. But how's the future looks like for you for advertising?
The future of advertising?
Yeah, advertising market, advertising industry. How's the future looks like?
Are you asking about the industry or for my own self?
Not industry. Yeah.
Yeah, again,
Because everything's AI now.
I understand, and
they can AI can do everything now.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
I don't need to go to college anymore. I can just get some video on YouTube and start doing stuff.
First of all, you don't know what is. When I was in the business, sometimes you had I came from the art direction side. I was the creative. I was the guy who was able to draw and who knew. I was the design side, and I had a partner who was always a writer side. And back then, we didn't have AI. We didn't have computers in the beginning. Yeah. Sometimes we would just lock ourselves in a room and stare at each other for 5-6 hours trying to come up with concepts and ideas.
Exactly, yeah.
Today, you could just say, give me a concept for this problem and this problem. And then, then you figure out a way probably how to make it unique and make it your own. So I think in many respects, the initial idea may be a little, I'm assuming, and again, I don't live in that world anymore, but I think I think if I was given a problem to solve from a marketing standpoint, I could probably today just go online and say, create a logo for this or create a business plan for this, and it will give me something. And then my biggest job would probably be, okay, how do I tailor that and make it unique, make it different, and make it my own? Yeah. But, I guess there's a lot more stealing of things. Not that we didn't steal ideas when I was back there, but you always, so I'd imagine it's changing the world, the advertising and marketing world drastically, how does, the problem it was always a cut through the clutter. Okay. So but today or whether it was 35, 40 years ago when I did it, you still needed to do something unique and something eye-catching or something. So it all still comes down to the big idea. Yeah. So I don't think that changes. Okay.
Okay. So now you live in Cape Cod now. How did you find Cape Cod?
It was
New Jersey, Boston, Cape Cod.
Yeah. Well, I think, I said my wife loved the beach. I can't stand the beach. So, I mean, to be on Cape Cod, I don't like being out in the sun. I don't like to be, but coming from the Jersey Shore, coming from shore towns, my wife loved it. She always wanted to be near the water. So we had a neighbor that said, you guys should really look at Cape Cod. And it was a neighbor of mine that actually, because I remember when we first came up here, it was, the coastline here is drastically different than the Jersey Shore coastline. We're used to big open sand and yes, there's crowds. But then up here, I'm like, there's rocks on this beach. How's this a beach? It was different. I mean, it's beautiful, but we had to get used to a different coastline. And friends had turned us on to it, and we started going with them and started vacationing with them in the Dennis in the Dennis beaches, and we just kind of fell in love with it. And then we were renting for a few years, and then we ended up purchasing a home, and we would, so we would come to Cape Cod while I was working in Boston. We would come every weekend. So it was an all year round house, and we loved the winters here because no one was here. It was easier to go get to drive around. The crowds weren't here. Restaurants were easier to get into. Gyms were easier to get into. So we came every weekend. And then when I retired, we decided to make it our full-time. Okay.
So what about New Jersey? Any plan to go back or?
We go back every year. I mean, we visit family and stuff like that. We don't have any plans. This is our home. Yeah, this is our home. But we just return from there. We go down for big events. We go down for holidays, and they come. People love to visit us as well. So we stay in touch with our family.
Okay. Yeah. So you retire now. What do you do now?
Yeah. So when I first retired, it was at an early age. I think it was my wife who was like, "Well, what are you going to do? You can't just, And in the beginning, because I managed so many people, and there was the stress that came along with that, and the job and the role I had. In the beginning, I loved it. The first 2 or 3 months that I had off, it was wonderful because so much had been lifted. I didn't think about things at all. But then to say I was bored is an understatement. And I actually have a lot of friends now who are starting to retire, and I tell them you don't need to have necessarily a set in pen, but you've got to have some ideas of what you may want to do, because I think coming from the particular job I had, with the responsibility I had, and with all the people that I engaged with, I think what I missed the most was a sense of belonging to something. You know, I loved to tell people what I did, who I worked for. I loved interacting with people. And I found that although being retired and not going to work sounds great, but if you don't belong to something, I felt like I had no purpose. Yeah. And so I started to do some things, you know, consulting. I tried to do some consulting work, but then again, it was just me and clients. So again, that wasn't belonging to something bigger. Yes, it was fun. I was keeping my hand in the creative side of things and keeping my creative side of my brain sharp. I volunteered at places just to do certain things. And then what it all came back around to in the end was my training, my weight training. Yeah. And weightlifting was something I started doing when I was 16 years old. So I've been doing it for 45 years. Yeah. It was always an extremely important part of my life. It was the balance in my life for anything. Yeah. If I was going to, you know, eat what I wanted to eat, drink what I wanted to drink, I knew that weightlifting was going to provide that balance in my life. And, so I started working out. When I moved here full time, I started working out in the gym that I currently work out in with the same gym you work out in. And all of a sudden, I felt this sense of community again. And I felt this sense of people that I see every day. And in a way, I used to say this, I'd leave the house and because my wife was working and my dog was in the house, and I'd say, okay, Dad's going to go to work now. I mean, going to the gym was my new job. It was, but I was just taking care of myself, you know. But I think, like I said, I mentioned this sense of community. The gym is a community. It's people. It's like the water cooler in the office. You know, you see the same people, and that's how I start my day. You know, going to the gym. I couldn't imagine not doing that. So I do. You know, I'm there 6 or 7 days a week. And the only reason if I'm not there every day, it's because I need to go somewhere or do something else. But I do that because I love being part of that community. And that's the big thing about our gym. It's a community. It's more than a gym.
Okay. So now you're a personal trainer now.
Yeah, I am a personal trainer there. It's not something that I always set out to do or to be. But when I think about how important the gym was in my life through good times and bad times, and it was always the one constant thing for me was training. That no matter what was going on in my life, training was always the thing that seemed to be the constant, the consistency of that I loved, the structure of it. And so I was thinking about it. I'm like, you know, I've trained all my life, and I've sort of reinvented myself a lot when I stopped working. Maybe I'll be a personal trainer. What's involved in being a personal trainer? And I had a conversation with the gym owner, and he said, you know, we really would love to have you here. You come with a lot of experience, and there's a place for you. So the type of clients I train tend to be different clients than the other trainers there. Yeah. I've sort of fallen into a little niche where I'm training older clients, let's say, more mature clients. You know, I think the average age of my clients is probably in their 70s. Yeah. Clients with disabilities. So I get it. I started, it's not what I thought going out when I created my own brand for my training business. But I fell into this niche of clients that now training has become, it's very purposeful for me. I finally have I have something again, like I did when I worked, that I feel good about. I feel like I'm helping people too. Most of my clients who come in, they all have the same goals because they're older. Maybe they haven't been in a gym in a long time. Yeah. Maybe they used to train, they used to work out, and now they're intimidated to get back to the gym. You know, I always tell them the most intimidating thing in our gym is me, probably the way I look, you know, but, so I help them get back into the fold. And it's very fulfilling work because they come in every day, they train, they're feeling stronger. And a lot of my gyms, a lot of my clients, they do have, whether it's things like arthritis, it's not even like injuries and all. It's just the natural things that occur and happen to people as they age, they're going through it. But they feel so much better and stronger. They go to their doctors and the doctors are saying, what do you do? Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. And it makes me feel so good when I hear those things. It's funny. I have a lot of clients that come in, and when I get a new client, I always say to them, okay, what hurts you? What's happening? What do you feel? Well, this hurts, that hurts, my shoulder hurts, my neck hurts, my low back hurts. Yeah. And I always say, well, that may not go away, So you could be, if they're in pain, I could say you could be in pain and be strong, or you could be in pain and be weak. I go to the gym every day with low back pain, and but they feel so much better. And because I've been training for so long, 45 years or so, I've trained around injury, I've trained around aches and pains. I know how to do it, so I can create programs for them that does the same thing for them. And I always tell them, if this hurts or that hurts, we strengthen other parts of the body to help you compensate for that. And especially with a lot of my older clients as well too, training legs, and everybody wants flashy, they want big arms and they want this and that, but they don't realize how important being able to have a stable foundation and building your legs is as we age, walking up and down stairs and
the basic stuff, Yeah.
The other thing I think that I've learned, because again, I'm that person too. I'm aging, and I'm proof that if you dedicate yourself, if you have discipline and you're consistent about what you do and you work hard, you'll be successful, And the other thing is, as we age, I think it's extremely important to try to do something every day, every other day, because muscles atrophy a lot faster as you get over the age of 50. So never mind when you're in your 60s or your 70s. And when people say, well, can I build muscle? Can I build strength? I'm 75. I go, you absolutely can. Yeah. And I'm proof of that. And I think that's what makes them comfortable with me. And I see it with my clients. They get stronger. They feel good about themselves. They have confidence again. And it can happen. And you can make strides at any age. But again, I think the keys that I always say with my particular clients are consistency, discipline, and hard work. And I do think discipline is a big part of it, because you can't have consistency without discipline.
Exactly.
Because discipline is and it's not even motivation. I tell people, they go, oh, well, you're really motivated. I go, it's not motivation that gets me to the gym every day. Because some days I'm not motivated.
Yeah, me too.
Right. Some days I don't feel well. My back hurts maybe more, but it's the discipline that still gets me into the gym to do something. And I always feel better when I leave, so discipline is a big, discipline is a hard thing to teach. And I don't know.
It's a mindset.
I'd love to learn more about it. Yes, it is a mindset. I don't know if you're born with it, if you can develop it, but I just know that if you can be disciplined about it and you can be consistent about what you do, you're going to see results.
How do you discipline your customer at this age?
Well, I think what happens is I'm always very honest up front.
You call them, you text them, you go pick up them in the house.
In the beginning, obviously, you're working with a lot of my clients. I work with for a few weeks, a few months in the beginning to get them set up, and then they go off on their own. Yeah. Okay. But it's those first couple of months, I think, that you start with a new client, those are important, because the first thing I always ask a client too, after I ask them what hurts them is, and I ask them what their goals are, and they all seem to have the same goals. They just want to feel stronger again. They want to feel healthy, and they want to feel youthful again. But then I always say to them, be honest with me. How many days a week do you want to train?
Yeah.
Right? Because if somebody says, well, I'm going to get in here 1 day a week, well, then obviously they're doing a total body workout in that one day. But if they're coming in 2-3 days a week, then you can put a program together. But I always say to them, you need to be honest with yourself. And this comes to the discipline. Exactly. If I give you a 3-day split workout routine and you only come to the gym 1 or 2 days a week, well, you may only be training another body part every 10 days to 2 weeks, something. So you need to stick to it. That's why with a lot of clients, sometimes it's better sometimes to do a simple upper body workout and a lower body workout. You get them to come to the gym every other day. They get some rest in between, and then they kind of get hooked. I think what happens is that's where the discipline, they start seeing results and they start feeling better, right? I always tell people, just do something, because you'll feel better about yourself, and that'll make you want to come back to the gym. So I think the discipline comes in once they start feeling better about themselves inside, even if it's not, visually looking better, but they feel better about themselves and they like the way they feel. So it makes them come to the gym. Okay. And that's how you can build discipline.
So, do you talk with them about nutrition and stuff like that? Sleep,
I think,
all these things?
Yeah, I think it's obviously where you are in your life and what your goals are. Nutrition is different, right? I am not a nutritionist, but I'm knowledgeable enough for what my clients need to achieve and what they want. I think for my clients, again, the key for them is, especially as they age, is understanding, are they eating enough protein? Because protein is important for building muscle, and muscle and bone density, especially for older clients, is extremely important. And it's surprising how many of them don't eat enough protein. It's important to have pre-workout meals sometimes, because a lot of them aren't using supplements. So then it's more important to get it through food. So I do ask them about it, but a lot of my clients don't come to me for nutrition advice, because they're at a different point in their life. They love to leave the gym and then go have that cheeseburger and the fries. So I don't, again, it's the type of client I work for. They're looking more for a balance in their life.
Yeah.
I think if they had horrible eating habits and it was fighting and hurting their gains they were having, we would have that discussion. But they don't tend to come to me for nutrition advice. Okay. There are a lot of, and I'm honest about it. I'm always honest with my clients too. If there are better resources for that, if they, I know enough so somebody can make gains and all, but we have other trainers at our gyms that focus more on that, because people come because they want to reduce body fat, they want to be more lean.
Exactly.
Again, my clients, they're generally not trying to get leaner. They just want to feel stronger and they want to feel youthful again. So, we work out and then go enjoy yourself and have they're not at a point in their life where they want to give up anything.
Okay. What about yourself? Do you work out every single day, or you have a day off?
I work out every single day, but I do have what I call as off days. And on my off days, I'll do some cardio, I'll do some stretching, and I'll do some core work. So those are my off days. Again, I want to be careful, because there's no one way that is successful for anybody to train. Yeah. You have to find what works for you. I have found, despite being in a gym 6-7 days a week, those days where I don't do resistance training, I don't do weight training, are important, because I've made more gains the past year or two by actually not weight training every day and giving my body time to recuperate and recover. And that's when I think that's where the growth happens. I don't think the growth happens in the gym, especially as we get older. We need more time to recuperate from our workouts. So I wouldn't recommend any of my clients weight training every single day. I do recommend that they do something almost every day to keep moving. Yeah. Because it's important, because, but do different type of things.
Okay. So I realize that your bicep is so big. So what's the secret to develop a bicep like that?
Biceps?
Yeah.
Oh, it's, again, it still all comes down to consistency, I think. I don't, it's any muscle group, for instance, the past 4 or 5 years, I've actually trained legs more than I ever had, because of how important it is as we age as a muscle group and feeling youthful, having strong legs and all. But I think what people have to be careful about is seeing somebody doing something in the gym, or reading this and reading that, and think, oh, that's what I got to do. Or Arnold had great biceps. What did he do? I think the important thing is finding the exercises
that
that you feel the muscle. I always tell people we're not weightlifters if we're there for the aesthetic part of it. We're not lifting weights. We are training the muscles and finding the exercises and the movements where you truly feel it. You know, you feel it in the muscle. You feel the muscle contracting. You feel it over. That's what's going to happen. And I've experimented for years to find different things, and I always come back to certain core exercises. When I have clients who want to, you know, if they want bigger arms, they want bigger triceps and all, I may say to them, okay, well, this is the exercise. If they like the exercise, because a lot of times I go in with a client and I have some idea of what I'm going to do because I've been doing it a long time, but they don't feel it maybe in the tricep or the bicep or the chest. So I'm like, okay, we'll try something else. So the key thing is, again, you've heard about the whole mind muscle connection and making sure you feel that, right? So is finding exercises that people they feel good for them. They're comfortable doing them. Sometimes people just like, oh, I don't like the way that feels, or I don't like my elbow. Okay, then we're not going to do that. I don't force them in because I want them to come back into the gym too, right? So you want to give them a program and the exercises that they're going to enjoy and want to do.
Exactly.
Now, as they start building a foundation and building some strength in their tendons again, and their muscle and strength in their muscles, sometimes they progress and we change their workouts down the road. But in the beginning, I think it's just finding them. But I do, where I was getting at is, I do have certain exercises I tell them, like, oh, if I want to do that, I call non-negotiables. And I have those as well too. So even though I change things up, I have a couple of exercises that if I was going to train biceps, or I was going to train chest, or I was going to train legs, like I'm doing that exercise at every leg workout, every bicep workout, because I love that, the way it feels. I love how I respond to it. But I may change things up for variety with other things, but non-negotiables is what I call them. You know?
So what about nutrition? Do you have a nutrition plan for? Do you eat something
for myself?
Yeah,
I think I've always eaten well. So I've always eaten a balance. You know, I'm not a junk food eater. I never ate sweets and candies and sugars. So I think that helps me. I've always been someone that ate protein, you know, and nobody forced me to eat vegetables. I think that came from my upbringing. We always ate good food, you know, like balanced food. We weren't given choices as kids like people are today. Like, oh, well, Joey doesn't like those, so we don't eat those. No, when I was growing up, the food was put on the table, and if you didn't eat it, you weren't forced to eat it, but you sat at the table and you didn't get up until everyone was done, and you didn't get anything else to eat. Yeah. Today, people, I see parents, they make this for one child, this for one child. Exactly. So they grow up with bad eating habits. So what I'm coming back to is I just grew up with good eating habits, and I do eat that way. It's not that I don't go out and have a cheeseburger and fries every once in a while. Yeah, I enjoy that. But I, you know, we tend to, my wife's a great cook, and, you know, if we're not going out, I think the problem is sticking with a nutrition plan, going out a lot. And we do go out a lot. Yeah. But when we had children and we were working, you know, we were working family with children, you know, we had a protein, we had a vegetable, you know, we had a starch, kind of like a balance. And that's the way we grew up. And you didn't get dessert, as we called it in our house, you know, if you didn't eat your food. So I just think good eating habits for myself is what has helped me at this point in my life as well too. Okay.
So what about a supplement? Do you have any specific supplement, or like a whey protein, creatine?
Yeah, I'm.
Or is there a favorite one?
Over the years I have gone up or down with supplements, and there's a lot of talk in the industry whether
side
it's
effects,
whether it's excuse me.
There's a lot of side effects with a supplement.
Yeah, I think again, it's age based, right? It's where you are. I do believe that all of my clients, I do tell them after they train to try within a half hour to get some protein, whether it be, I myself, I bring to the gym my shaker bottle that's got whey in it. And as soon as I'm done with my workout, I fill it up, I shake it with water, and that's protein. That's what I drink on the way home. So, to me, it's a meal, right? It's like, you know, cause I'm not going to leave there and go to a restaurant and have an omelet or eggs, you know, it's convenient, you know? Exactly. So I think that's very important to make sure you're getting enough protein in you to build muscle, to recover. And but it's funny because when I was younger, I don't even know if people take them anymore. When I was younger, there were all these magazines, and I was eating 25, 30 liver tablets a day, and there was all this stuff, and we did all kinds of stuff we took because so and so, this bodybuilder took it, or that bodybuilder took it, and I just recently went back to just taking basic vitamins, which I had done that in a long time. For some reason, I got away from that. And there is a lot of talk, and I do think if you eat balanced meals, if you eat well, you probably don't need. There's a lot of talk in the industry now. I try not to get too wrapped up into it, but there is a lot of talk in the industry that the whole supplement industry is a farce, you know.
Yeah.
So
another talk that I want to know your opinion about it is a steroid usage, anabolizant. What do you think about it?
Usage.
Yeah. Do you?
I personally have never used anything. I'm being honest about that. I went through periods where I wondered. I'm thinking about a little, about testosterone. Certainly I know people who use testosterone replacement therapy because they're older and their testosterone levels are lower, and it certainly helps. I mean, the problem with steroids is, and
like a bodybuilder,
this is not my area, so I want to be careful what I say and all. The problem with steroids is they work. Yeah. And there's no denying it. But to me, and again, I have very little experience because I'd rather see people going to a physician and somehow using it in a way, or maybe it's a friend who knows how to use it, but to do it just in a back room in a bubble and not know what you're doing, because there's a lot of
side effects.
There's a lot of it's not an area I know a lot about because I haven't really used it. I've been natural.
Okay. So I don't know more about you. I realized that your last name is Inácio.
Yeah.
Inácio is a Portuguese name. Where you got this name? Your mom, dad?
All right. Now we're going to go in a little different area of my life. Well, so Venancio is a Portuguese name.
Yeah.
So I grew up in New Jersey. I was actually born in Newark, New Jersey, which is a Portuguese community. It was called the Ironbound section, or Down Neck, they used to call it. But a big Portuguese community, just as there is, I think, here in Cape Cod and Hyannis, Brazilian and Portuguese. So I grew up. My mother was Italian, and my father, who raised me, was Portuguese. And I grew up the oldest of 5 boys, and the Portuguese community was a big part of our life. We lived there. We went to Portuguese restaurants. My father.
But you don't speak Portuguese, right?
No. My father spoke Portuguese, but his parents died at a young age, so there was no. He spoke. I vaguely remember him speaking it to his mother, but he never taught it to us. And maybe when his brothers, my uncles, would come over the house, they spoke it a little, but. We moved very quickly, so we moved out of the Portuguese areas when we were young, and my father's parents died when I was young, so Portuguese as a language wasn't spoken much. But if we fast forward a little bit now, as I said, my mother was Italian, but it wasn't until around 2007 that I discovered that I was actually adopted. So
adopted by who? Portuguese family or Italian family?
My mother was my birth mother.
Okay.
But my father, whose last name was Venancio, which is the name I have today, he wasn't my real father. My mother was married prior, and had me with someone else. So even though I grew up thinking I was a Portuguese and Italian, I'm actually 100% Italian. So I have the Venancio last name, but I'm not Portuguese. But it's funny because a lot of people think Venancio is Italian, and then I'll just go, yeah. And if people go Venancio, that's Portuguese. If they know, then it's too complicated to tell people about my past. So I just go with if people think I'm Italian, I'm Italian. You know.
Okay. So how did you feel when you figured out that? About adoption.
Discover that? Yeah.
That age.
I think.
How did you deal with that?
How did I deal with it? I grew up in a family that wasn't always on the outside. We were the family everybody wanted to be. We had a nice home, a good life, and you know, everybody was successful and all.
It's a middle class, right?
Yeah, upper middle class family. But growing up, you know, there was abuse, there was alcohol abuse, there were things that went on. So, and a lot of it came more forward as we were adults and talked about things that happened in our past. And I struggled with some of it. My father, who raised me, how I came about it was I had a disagreement with my father, to be honest with you. And we had an argument, and nobody argued with my father. That you were raised
a tough guy.
You were raised like you know, you listened to your parents and you didn't talk back.
Yeah.
And, you know, or you got hit. You know, and I will admit, I didn't grow up in that kind of a. We were not. He was not abusive to us. You know, we feared him because he would yell and threaten us. You know, so I can count on one hand how many times maybe a strap came across my backside. You know, But I remember, so I was an adult and I had a disagreement with my father, and I kind of stood up to him, and I was like, I had an argument with him, and no one ever did that to my father. And we had this disagreement, and I remember he left the house, and I sat there feeling really horrible that I had disrespected this man, you know?
You were in house, or?
I was in his home. We were up here, and I went back to New Jersey for the holidays, I think, you know? And, you know, you put alcohol in a family situation when everybody's having a good time, and things sometimes get a little out of control.
Exactly.
And I remember I feel really terrible about me not having this disagreement with my father and us not talking and all. And someone in my family came forward to tell me, don't be so upset. Don't be so hard on yourself. He's not really your father. And it just blew my mind. I was in my 40s at the time. Yeah. But like, as I said, there was other things going on in our family. There was abuse that my brothers, you know, and I had talked about the things that had happened to us when we were younger, that we started sharing with one another as adults. And in a way, finding out that he wasn't my father was very uplifting for me. And it made, and I wanted to know about who was my father, where is he?
You started looking for
him. And I had a whole lifetime that had gone by, and I didn't know who I really was at that point. I had this whole life. I thought I knew who I was, right? Yeah. I knew who my mother was and this man who had raised me, and we had a good life. You know, he provided for us and all. And he had just passed away also. He was a big smoker. So 3 packs of cigarettes a day, and he ended up dying of emphysema. So I didn't have this, you know, so I just went on this crusade to find my real father. And through talking to my uncles who knew him, people knew, you know, I was able to track him down. And I very much expected for this man to say, whoa, I've got this life now. It's nice to hear from you, but, you know, we're all adults now. And, you know, but it turns out he made a promise to my mother that he wouldn't look for me, or, you know. So when I found him, I'll never forget, I called, and he finally answered the phone, because I would call all the time and his answering machine would come on. And, you know, after a lot of research, we knew that this was the guy. And I was just sitting around one day, and I was bored, and my wife said, why don't you call your father? You know, and he answered the phone at that time. And, I remember like it was yesterday, and I said, I remember I had this thing I was going to say to him. I was like, hey, my mother is so-and-so, because I knew he was married. I in this and that, and I think you're my father. Can we talk? And there was like a slight pause, and he said, sure, we can talk. And we probably talked for about 2.5 hours on the phone that time. And I was living in Massachusetts at the time, and he was, oddly enough, about 20 minutes from where my mother was living in New Jersey. So he had been there all the time, and they were aware of where they each lived, even though they hadn't been together in a long time. And I made it a point to go down there and connect with him and see him. You know, without my family, I went down first to check it all out and all. And I was very fortunate to find him, because then all of a sudden I was on this discovery for myself. I wanted to know who I really. Here I am, an adult.
Yeah.
It was 2007. I'm like 45 years old, and I've got a whole new life that I didn't even know about. And so we would spend a lot of time just talking, and I felt like I learned about myself, who I was, where I came from every day. And unfortunately, I just lost him a month or so ago.
Okay.
And I miss those conversations. But it's hard now, because I don't feel like I feel like there were things that were still unsaid. Maybe why they weren't together, and he was always very cautious. He'd give me little bits of things, but I think he was afraid that I was gonna hear something I didn't want to hear, and I was gonna leave. And but at this point in my life, I wasn't really looking for a father. At this point, I was just trying to learn who I was. And there were certain things, certain skills, and they talk about nurture versus nature and growing. When I first met my father, well, first of all, I had 4 other brothers, and we all had the same mother. I am nothing like any of my brothers. We are so different, and I'm so much like this man I met later in my life, and I didn't grow up with him. But mannerisms, the way our handwriting style, just crazy things that are just bred into you, I guess. But because they weren't learned from him. I wasn't with him. The way we, and obviously certain features, and stuff, and then understanding, well, oh wait, maybe that's why I had curly hair and all my brothers had straight hair, or why my own kids didn't necessarily look like my brother's kids, and then seeing photos of my father when he was younger and looking at my own children, my sons. One of my sons looks just like my father did when he was growing up. So a lot of things just start making more sense.
It makes sense.
You wonder when everybody's got baby pictures, right? From the age of 1 to there's so many, there's no, my mother's holding me, but my father's never holding me when I was a baby. And you don't think about these things growing up, but then all of a sudden, like later on, you go, oh my God, all this stuff makes sense now. Why this, why that, and so,
the way it is, man. So I realized that you cover your body with a tattoo. So
tattoos,
the story behind that.
I used to kid people when they'd say, why did you do this to yourself? And I used to kid a lot. Well, I didn't get a lot of attention as a child, and I'd say that jokingly. But I do think I did grow up in a household where, now you have to understand, I didn't know I was adopted. Okay. So I spent a lot of time with my grandparents, my mother's parents, and I didn't know why, but I realized that, it's not that I wasn't loved by my father who raised me and all, but I think I was still maybe I was looked at by my mom's grandparents as the life they wanted for their daughter that didn't materialize. Okay, so I spent a lot of time with my grandparents growing up, not with my father who raised me for some reason, and my brothers didn't. It was me. And I always thought, well, I'm getting special treatment because I'm the oldest. And sometimes in Italian families, the oldest was treated differently. I didn't realize I was being treated differently at the time because I was adopted. Okay. And again, this is another thing that years later you start thinking about. I just thought, I'm the oldest son of 5. I'm more important. That's why I'm treated special. I was treated differently because I don't think I wasn't his birth son, And he was hard on me. But he was a football coach, and I'd play football, and he'd always say to me afterwards, I need to be tougher on you because you're my son and all. So I always grew up trying to seek his approval. Okay. And so I think as I got older, I seemed to be always seeking I always wanted to do well and stand out and be noticed. So I think I used to, when I was younger, I started seeing people with tattoos, and I'm like, oh, look at that. That's cool. First of all, there was the creative side of it the creative expression of tattooing. But I think the initial reason I started getting tattooing wasn't necessarily the creative side of it as much as it was to kind of stand out a little bit and be a little different in the crowd. I think that's also why I started weightlifting and, I'll call it bodybuilding. Yeah. Besides being smaller and wanting to be stronger to play football and all, I did like the ability to transform yourself and to take charge and be different and, and have a physique that was different than somebody. And I think as I started getting tattooed, I like how I was starting to now not only change the appearance of my muscles, say by weight training, but I was changing the appearance of my skin in a way. And starting to, it's almost like you're born with this blank canvas, but then it's up to you if you want to change that, and I thought, well, because I have a lot of friends today who say, well, why do you do that to yourself? Why do you look like that? And I never say this to them, but in the back of my, I'm like, well, why do you just have all this white skin? Why do you want to look like everybody else? So, and then another thing that happened with tattooing is when I first started getting tattooed, it was more the crowd, that the undesirable crowd. And that always appeared to me, whether it was the bikers and stuff like that, that side. Oh, and that's where I was different than my brothers. My brothers, nobody ever got tattooed then. And I liked hanging out with sort of the rougher crowd, and they all had tattoos. And so I started on this journey of getting tattooed, and all of a sudden, tattooing started becoming a little more mainstream. Everybody was getting tattooed. Yeah. And I didn't start getting tattooed till I was in my mid to late 20s. Okay. And I started doing it. And then in my 30s, and I learned about collecting, being called a tattoo collector. So I would travel. I mean, not only did I travel in the United States, but then I started traveling abroad to Italy and stuff and getting tattooed. So I started collecting, like art. It would be like somebody who collected artwork. I'd know an artist that I wanted a tattoo, and I would go. But I think what happened is, as more and more people started getting tattooed, I never started getting tattooed to look like everybody else, right? So when everybody started getting tattooed, I'm like, well, if they're going to do that, then I've got to do this. You know what I mean? So it just became this obsession to still not look like everybody else, And that was the other thing, especially with my job. So as I was building my tattoo collection, it was sort of under the clothes at work, because I said I worked in corporate America. I didn't have the beard I have now. I had a head of hair, but I didn't tattoo my hands until I left my job. After and I think I had that appointment made as soon as I knew I was leaving, because I always said, when I leave this job, I'm never going to work again at a job where someone cares about my appearance. Yeah. So I immediately and I remember my wife saying, but you're only 55 years old at the time. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm not going to work a job where that matters anymore. Okay. Because she knew I was going to do that, and she was on board with it. But I think it was a little earlier than, leaving work was a little earlier than she thought I did. Okay. And yeah, that, I just, and it's so funny because people say, well, it's an addiction, it's this or that. Yeah,
usually society, they associate tattoo with people came from prison, people just
it is funny.
How do you deal with that, man?
it is funny because even, I was fortunate my kids went to private school, and there'd be like luncheons or breakfasts with the fathers and the daughters. And I was different than other fathers. I looked different, and I always did feel bad that maybe I got a little different attention than maybe my kids wanted me to have. Again, you do have to balance the way you look versus, I had children, so I didn't want them to feel embarrassed by me and all. And I was very fortunate to have supportive children who
they didn't embarrass you?
No, I think they loved me because I didn't look like the other dads. Okay. And I was unique. And because I raised kids who are all unique in their own ways, whether it's things they do, how they act, behave. I'm very proud of them. And I think they grew up but to get back to what you were saying, people did think the way, because of the way I looked, that that I maybe came from some other background. They didn't know I was an executive at a financial services company. And I especially meeting somebody at a restaurant or a bar and stuff, you start talking and they look at you and it's like, they're almost embarrassed, but they want to say is like, oh, you are articulate. You can talk. You are educated. You know, I didn't think, you know, so the whole idea of not judging a book by its cover, I'm a good example of that. And when my, and I've got a wonderful wife. I've been with her for, I think we're coming up 40 years. I know somewhere it's tattooed on me. When we started traveling, when I retired, we would start traveling, especially going to Europe and all. She would shake her head sometimes and I go, what's the matter? And she goes, I always forget why people stare at us. But I was normal to her, you know, but when we travel and my wife, she has my wife is is not tattooed. She is, you know, the direct opposite of me and the way I look and all. And, but she would just laugh, you know, and, I think we used to have a code word every once in a while. She'd go freak show, meaning, you know, people are staring at me as we walked, you know, down this road somewhere or something like that and all. But, yeah, you are judged the way you look, unfortunately. But I'm also at a point in my life now where I could care less, to be honest with you. I think that's why I tattooed my head, you know. So
you still have a space to do new tattoo, or you're down with that?
I really don't. I mean, to say I have really worked the last 35, 40 years on what I call a bodysuit to cover almost every part of my skin. There are small spots here or there.
They're not covered then?
But they are not something like to say I'm going to have an appointment with an artist, a new artist. That just, they're not good spots. They're not, to make an appointment. They're very small. And so what I do use those spots for though is to go back, hook up with an artist who I hadn't seen maybe in years that, and he'll fill in a little spot and we'll catch up.
Yeah.
Because I will say my tattoos for me are more than just tattoos or something that's either pretty to look at or something to look at. To me, they're all moments in time. It's where I met people. Maybe something was going on in my life. But every single tattoo I have, I can remember where it was, who did it. And in many cases, I became very close to the artist because maybe we stayed friends or maybe I got more tattoos by them. And so I would travel and meet with them and it was a time to catch up. So it's one of the reasons a lot of people today do what's called cover-ups. They don't like a tattoo and they cover it with another tattoo. I've never really done a cover-up on any of my tattoos because to me, they're moments in time, they're stories, they're memories I have. Yeah. And I don't regret any one of the tattoos I have.
Okay. Yeah. So did you design them, you give them to do it, or how did you come out to the layout?
That's interesting because being a creative person.
Yeah.
I also draw. I'm an illustrator. It's one of the things I do now. I spend a lot of time drawing. In the beginning, I did that. And I thought I had to do that, you know, and what I learned very quickly, and it was when I met one of my artists who did probably about 40% of my body, I remember I gave him a sketch that I had spent all this time doing. And he said, yeah, that's great. And when I went back to get the tattoo, he took my idea, but he didn't use my sketch.
Okay.
But what I realized was he brought a perspective to it that I didn't think about, you know, that fit my body better, that was more interesting than what I did. So it was my idea, but not my final design. Okay. So then I started trusting him. And in the end, I would just give him, like, if we did a certain piece, I'd say, hey, I want this Japanese dragon on my back, but I don't like these dragons. I don't like this dragon's head. I like this head. I don't like this body, but I like this body. And I'd just say, hey, go design it now, right? Yeah. So I started building a trust with him. And what I tell a lot of young people today who are getting tattooed is to go find you get a competent artist and trust the artist to do the design work. Tell them what you want. And, but I think you get better work from an artist today when no pun intended, but when they have skin in the game, they feel better about the work and you end up with a better product. I mean, if you were so good at doing that, that's what you'd be doing, instead of maybe being in a tech business or something like that.
Okay. I realized you have a long beard. So what's the story behind that?
Yeah, I don't. I always had facial hair. I think maybe again, I wanted a beard that no one else had. I don't know, so I remember when I was finishing up my job, I always had facial hair. Like I said, had a beard, maybe a goatee. So I started growing my beard before I had retired. It was only maybe one of these. And my boss would just stare at me across the table and he would go like this to me. He goes, it moves when you talk. And I go, well, yeah, it's connected to my chin and all. But, so it's the whole, remember we talked earlier about transformation. It's like, I've never said this before, but I was in branding my whole life. I guess I've been creating this brand my whole life too. I don't know, so again, it's trying to be just unique and being my own person and not trying to conform to any norms. Yeah. I did that for many, many years. And I just, I had a buddy that one time made a joke about like, what are you doing? And he goes, they asked me if somebody said, is this a midlife? This is when I was in my, are you going through a midlife crisis? And one of my buddies said, no, this is not a midlife crisis. This is a cry for help, he said, and I thought that was very funny. But I just think, again, it's about just being unique and expressing myself and the creative side of me. And fortunately, I have family, and I think where they draw the line is no face tattoo. They don't want me to do no face tattoo. My wife didn't want me to tattoo my neck. And it was interesting because I said, okay, I've got my hands tattooed. I've got my head tattooed, but you don't want me to tattoo my neck. But from her, it was an aesthetic point of view. She didn't like the way it made people look. She said it looked like their heads were floating. So I wore her down like I have on everything else over the years. She's so good that she lets me do my thing. And I just recently did the neck this past year. Yeah. And I remember when I came home and she kind of shook her head. She was a little disappointed, and I felt bad. I was hurt. I wasn't hurt. I felt bad that I had hurt her. And I said, what's the matter? She goes, well, it's beautiful and all, but she goes, now you look like everybody else. And I went, I look like everybody. How can I look like everybody else, And so I think, again, I never did this to look like everybody else.
Exactly.
So
okay. So do you have a brand called Viking? So you try to associate your image with your brand?
Yeah, when I got the go ahead from the gym owner and talked to him about being a trainer, again, I was in the branding business my whole life. I created brands for people. Yeah. I'm like, all right, I'm going to create a brand for myself. And I do think, my Viking Fitness is the brand I created for myself. It's twofold. One is I kind of look like a Viking, and it's not, but I like the whole Viking thing.
The concept. Yeah.
I like it. I grew up a Minnesota Vikings football fan, and I'm a big Vikings fan to this day. Yeah. I raised Viking fans. We were diehard. Unfortunately, it's a cursed franchise, but we are. So the whole Viking Fitness that I came up with was because for twofold. One was, as I said, I grew up I'm a huge Minnesota Vikings football fan, and I guess you could say my beard is a little Viking inspired.
Exactly, that's how I ask you.
In the end, when I ended up tattooing my head, I didn't know what I was going to do, and I wanted something organic and something that could flow. So there are actually ravens on my head, and ravens are a big part of Viking mythology and Norse imagery and all. I think their god Odin had two ravens. Yeah. And so I did ravens on my head. And matter of fact, inside the V of the Viking on is a raven inside that of my brand. Yeah. So people ask me if I was a Ravens football fan. No, the biggest Ravens football fan. I go, no, I'm a Viking fan. So yeah.
Okay. So let's go talk about brand. Okay. Now everything's a brand. We have a personal brand. We have a company brand. We have so how long do I need to develop my brand? So everybody know my brand, to put my brand certain level that people can see just my brand and recognize my service or
Yeah, I think
product?
we talked earlier about how when I started creating brands for people is doing something unique, right? And finding a little niche or finding something that somebody's not doing and figuring out how you can do it so you can stand apart and break away from the clutter or look different than everyone else, right? Once you have that and you're happy with it, and the key thing, it's much like weight training, I think it's consistency. Yeah. It's applying that brand across all channels, right? Today you've got social media, you've got, print is dying a little bit, but there's still print out there. So no matter, if you have signage, if you have merchandising you're using. So the way you build that brand is consistently using that brand, and consistently, same thing I said with training, is the key. Always using it the same way. Now, I'm not suggesting you can't adapt and change your brand, but if you're always changing it, you're going to dilute it and defeat it. No one's going to know what your brand is. Exactly. So again, consistently applying that brand. So there's different phases. There's creating the brand, right? That's right for you. Sometimes it's personal for people. Yeah. A lot of times when I used to create, if I was doing somebody's business, I'd say, hey, we've got this logo that I think is right, this feel, it's right for your business, it's right for your competitors, but save me time going through. What's your favorite? You have a favorite color you want it to be because it's your bit, right? Sometimes color is important for a brand, depending on what it is, but sometimes it's not. It's a matter of preference. Yeah. So again, once you have the brand, the key thing is consistently applying that brand on all marketing channels. Okay. That's how you build, because every time people see it, it makes an impression in their mind. Exactly. Okay. Psychologically. And if you're changing it for every reason because you want to change a color, and a lot of times people don't understand that. And a lot of times I do work for people and they don't want to come back to me for one reason or another. And it's generally not the cost. And I see them do something different with it and they change something. And I just feel bad because they don't realize they're diluting their brand. If you're changing it and people don't, every time you do that, people have a different impression of what your brand is. Okay.
But the color depend of my favorite color or depend of the service or product that I want to offer. The criteria to choose a color to the brand depend of what? My favorite color? Well, the color is associated with the thing that I want to do.
Yeah, when I mentioned, if I understand you, when I mentioned that I say people, what's your favorite color?
Yeah, that's right.
If someone's in a trucking industry and I'm doing a logo for the side of their truck and all, the color sometimes is not as important, and that's when I say, well, maybe I created a little brand or a little logo that has a hint to someone's daughter because of there's something personal about it. And so then his daughter's favorite color was purple or orange, and maybe we'll use that. Yeah. I won't use a color if I think it detracts from the brand, of course.
It's abstract.
And if you were like, if someone was creating a company that was they were selling organic vegetables or something like that, right? I wouldn't say, what's your favorite color? Is it pink? And then make because again, the color is not appropriate for maybe their target, for the audience, for the product. Yeah. So it really depends on the company. That's what I mean. Like I think, again, it depending on the industry, depending on the product, certain colors need to be there, to make it feel like. But again, sometimes you could take the other back to it too. If everybody in that industry is using brown and green, maybe you should be black and orange, and I'm just making, because you want to be unique. So it depends. Again, that was what it goes back to when I mentioned about, doing your research about your competitors. The last thing you want to do is create a brand that's going to look like everybody else. Right. So,
okay. So do you have a car collection?
Do you have a what?
Car collection.
A calculation?
You have a car and you collection
a car. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's another unique thing about me. I have a car that no one else has on the planet. So
where you find it?
Oh, well, when I first
it's a very beautiful, man. I saw in the gym.
When I first came to when I first moved up here, I rode motorcycles. I had a motorcycle. I had a custom motor. Again, I didn't want a plain motor. I customized it, my motorcycle, to be mine. I wanted it unique, and people do that all the time. That's the thing, especially Harleys. People buy them, they bolt. There's so much you could do to them to make them unique, make it your own. Yeah. But then when we moved here full time on Cape Cod, my wife was really nervous about me riding, and she hated it. She didn't ride with me. So I really wanted to do something that I could do with her and all. And I met a friend, and he built motorcycles, he built cars. And I said, I'm not feeling comfortable riding anymore. My wife is nervous about it. So I said, I think I'd like to do a car. I'd like to get rid of my motorcycle and do a car. And we were at a car show, and he said to me, well, what kind of car do you want to do? Because you could, is it a 68 Camaro? Is it what kind of car? And I said, I saw this movie that Sylvester Stallone was in called Cobra, and he had this really cool low car. And he goes, oh, that was a Merc. It was an old Mercury. He goes, well, if you like that kind of style, he goes, I know somebody who's got this car. They're cutting it apart. They're welding it. They're just going nuts making this unique car. But it looks like that. He goes, go take a look at it. Don't buy it, but go take a look at it. And I went. I remember the car was located in a little garage in Orleans. And I went the following day, and I looked at this thing. And it literally was just a rough it's almost like if you did a rough sketch, right? This car it was bare metal, there was rust, everything was spot welded together, so nothing was finished. There was no interior in it. And I looked at this thing, and I'm like, I need to own that. I didn't even know what it was, right? There was, and he had taken this car that started as a Buick and just started putting giant fins on it and putting Cadillac front bumpers on it. And it started as a 1950 Buick. But it ended up being 16 feet long, only about 46 inches high. So it was long, it was low, and, just like I wanted, but it was, I had to own it. There wasn't another car like it. It was sort of the last missing piece. I had this look of that no one had, and now I needed a car that no one had. And so I love the car. It's a project like anything else. There's always work. We're little by little we're doing. I don't know if it'll ever be finished, to be honest with you. It's really hard when you have a car like that. It's really hard because I'll just make a quick little thing so people who don't understand, the original roof line on my car, right? It's actually been, they call it chopped. It's been cut, right? So it's lowered 6 inches, okay, just the roof line. So when you do that, not only, now you have to cut the glass, okay? You have to do that. So when I collected just simple things like the moldings for the car, well, all those moldings have to be cut and welded. So there's a lot of little work to finish up the little details of it, and people don't understand, and there's a lot of custom stuff done to it. So if something breaks, it's not exactly like you can go to Napa Auto Parts and say, I need this part. Well, it doesn't exist. It needs to be made again. Exactly. So there's upsides to it, but then there's downsides to having that. And believe me, through the years, it's probably been about 15 years, working on the car and building it. And
you spend a lot of money on it, right?
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. But, you go at it little by little. Yeah, little by little. And that's how, because at the time, I still had children in college when we started the project of the car. We made sure we had our priorities straight, and we saved little piles of money for this, little piles of money for that. But now we love going my wife's a big part of it too. We go to car shows, and we love, my wife loves the attention the car gets, and she puts kids in the car, and because kids come up to the car and parents take pictures. It's fun. It's fun to have something. Again, it's that being part of something and having something. And
nobody asks you if you want to sell it?
I don't know how you would sell this car
what's your
because
value?
I don't even know how you could put a value on it. I don't think you do when you do things like that, you don't because the car, even though it technically is a 1950 Buick, it doesn't look like one, right? It's all custom. The drive, everything is custom about it. So the amount of money I've put into that car over the years, I couldn't sell it for that. It's funny with things like that. My buddy who did a lot of the metal fabrication on it, he built these crazy one-off motorcycles, beautiful stuff, handmade all the parts, handmade the pipes, handmade this or that. And nobody wanted to buy them, because sometimes people want to make their own unique thing, right? So this already looks unique. So he made a comment to me one time. He goes like, man, I have so much time and money in these things and I can't even sell them for $10,000, you know? He's like, maybe I should just say they're $100,000, you know, and then maybe some Arab sheik is going to buy one or something because it's so unique and different, you know. So what is it worth? It's worth what somebody wants to pay. But the money a lot of us in the custom car world put into it is we don't do it because we're looking for any value at the end. We do it because we're trying to create something that's unique and different. And, but it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun.
Exactly. Okay. Last question for you. When you die, everybody will die one day, unfortunately. How do you want friend, community, family remember you?
Yeah, I've never been asked that question. Maybe what I told my wife I would like to happen should I go first answers that, because for my family and my friends, I've always been about doing the right thing, living your life with honor. It's one of the things my father taught me, is to live your life with honor, do the right thing by your family, by yourself. But in the end, I've always wanted to have a good time and make people laugh and enjoy themselves. So I said to my wife, I said, I don't want a funeral. I said, I want you to have all our friends over and I want you to throw a big party and I want you to just enjoy and share stories about how we laughed and how we had a good time.
Exactly.
You know, so, but aside from that part, I do want to be remembered as somebody that, worked very hard, worked hard for their family, worked hard to develop friendships. And my friends, you know, I have a lot of friends, but then I have a core group of friends who are like family to me, and they'd do anything for me, and I would do anything for them. So I just want to be remembered as somebody who you could count on, who would work hard. I worked hard in business, I work hard at relationships, I work hard in the gym, and it's not always easy, but I do it, you know. Because again, it comes back to being disciplined, you know.
Exactly. So. Okay, Chuck, thank you for this amazing conversation.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'll invite you more to talk about something else. Okay.
Oh, well, we could figure that out. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.